Now, the last couple of nights, I've been reading an extremely interesting book. It's called Dangerous Liaisons, Red Flags of Dating and Relating. And Marina Bakker, the author, has been nice enough to drop into the studios live this morning here on ABC Far North to talk us through her new book. Marina, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kia. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you in. Look, I want to start with what I read in the dedication, because it was the first thing that grabbed me was, and I'm going to read this a direct quote. This book is dedicated to women who, in wanting to love and be loved, have found themselves in the hands of dangerous people. Many women have lost their lives in their attempt to preserve the ideal of romantic love, family and commitment. That grabbed me, absolutely did, particularly in the context of recent years where there's been much more of a focus on the kind of abusive relationships that people do find themselves in. So I'm going to get you to start, Marina, please, by describing what you mean by a dangerous liaison.
A dangerous liaison is a person who is not good for us. And they're not good for us because they impact on our emotional and mental well-being, as well as physically as well. So I suppose when we often think of dangerous people, we may think of, in particular in the domestic violence context, of people who do us physical harm. But the impact on our emotional and mental well-being, I don't believe has been emphasised enough, and what that truly means in regards to us experiencing trauma upon trauma upon trauma.
And that's what drove you to write the book, Marina?
Yes. What drove me to write the book is because I started to become aware that we don't know about a certain group of our population. So we're actually approaching our potential love partners thinking that they may possibly be like ourselves. They may have conscience, they may have empathy like ourselves, or they're wanting the same thing. So that's what drove me to write this, as well as what I started to come to understand is that a lot of us don't know what abuse is. We actually don't know what it is. And so we actually stay in it because we think it's okay. And I don't think we talk enough about the damage of what occurs, especially in intimate partner abuse.
And were you seeing this as well from experience within peer group, within people that you knew, that this was a message that was sort of coming through repeatedly?
Absolutely. I think with myself, it was more when I started, to become aware of, wow, what is really happening out there? People are actually thinking that this is love. People are doing this to themselves. And then I just started to research more and more and more into the area of neuroscience and just started to realise the impact that unresolved trauma has on our relationship selections. And that's when I started to really think, wow, we haven't actually been taught that we can choose and that it's our choices that are actually then going to determine what the outcome's going to be. And that's when I started to think, well, possibly if we have this knowledge, then will that allow us to make better choices? Will that allow us then to come together more collectively so we can support each other through relationship mishaps?
And they're the sorts of people that you hope will be able to take from this book and learn from this book and apply within their own experience and their own lives, Marina?
Yes. In particular, for women, hopeless romantics, the ones who are really looking for Prince Charming.
And finding themselves in a situation where they don't recognise the behaviour of that other person that are destructive towards them.
Absolutely, very destructive. Because we've also come to see that as, a trophy prize, I suppose. A strong, the strong man or money, depends whatever it is that we define as our, true love sort of encounter.
Now, the neuroscience part of it is incredibly interesting because it's such a frontier subject at the moment, and we're learning so many things from, neuroplasticity through fast and slow thinking, where you get that convergence of psychology and biology coming together. So can you tell, without giving too much away, can you give us an idea of what you were discovering as you were researching into this and what you were learning from it and taking away that could apply within this context?
Yeah, absolutely. can use that word. It's the neurobiology, psychology. It's all connected.
But for a long time, it hasn't been.
Absolutely.
The connections have not been properly understood.
It's so true. And it's exciting, isn't it? I mean, it's so exciting. So, what happens in my brain then is going to send messages to my psychology, which then will impact on my body. And that's when things really started to come together for me. Because as you said, before that, always having the understanding, but now we've got the science to prove it. So that's what I've attempted to do in my book. When our abandonment is triggered, it gives us that desperate sort of feeling all through that we need to have that person because it's love. So what I've tried to start to do is listen to your body, but what it's often telling you is that anxiety that you're feeling or what have you could also be that that person is not good for you.
So how common were a connection between some form of trauma earlier in life and getting to a position where you were unable to, or people are unable to make that decision, be able to recognise what isn't good for them? Is it almost like in every single case, do you think?
Where they don't recognise it?
Yeah, like is there a connection to an earlier trauma,
Absolutely.
do you think, pretty much
Absolutely.
always? Is that the common kind of theme that runs through it, do you think?
I think, yes. Well, what research is also showing us in particular, if children are raised in this toxicity with a dangerous liaison, then often in adult life they do go on to make the same similar partner selections.
So that cyclical nature of it.
Absolutely. It's that desperation, that going after it, the up and down. We actually then start to think that the chaos that we are living through, having to, chase love, get them to love us, all of those things, it's normal to us. So it feels normal. And so when people come to me as a relationship therapist, this is when we can now start to, in a way, break down, not be hypervigilant or drop down to a depressed state, which is what I talk about.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about, what is and isn't love, because now when people say to me, oh, I love, he loves me, I love him, I say, well, love is also a verb.
Yeah, it's what you do. It's not what you say.
It's so true. And love, yes, okay, we are always, our interactions can hurt other people, but it's when it is continual and it is deliberate, well, no, that's not love anymore. Now we use the word abuse. And so I'm trying to sort of also, I think through the right education is we can start to possibly change how we're thinking about this thing called love.
But it is, as you say, something which is connected to a physiological thing as well. It's not just as simple as changing your mind, is it, Marina?
No, it's
for
not.
many people, it is actually about a biology that's occurred.
Absolutely.
Or has occurred, like as you say, in the childhood experience.
Absolutely. But we know we can change. We know that we can change our biology, our physiology, and it's certain things that need to occur. And so we have to stop the pathways. We have to stop doing the same thing. Have to stop. And that's why for a lot of women where we put ourselves at risk, and in particular because divorce rate's higher now, we have a lot more, single people out there. We're dating alone, like dating at home and then believing what's on the other end of the internet. And there's not enough education around it. I mean, now stats are showing us that young adolescents are online dating. So where's the education? Where's the education around, well, it's an unregulated industry and anyone can put themselves on there. But we're supposed to know. And often when it comes to love, that's when we know the least.
And this book provides that roadmap, both through the process of first acknowledging and recognising the situation that you are in, and then what you can proactively do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So prevention is better than cure. So once we get ourselves entangled with these type of situations, I cannot tell you how hard it is to get out of. And I know this book has been written for women because we experience the highest rate of abuse. However, the men who also suffer is quite high. And I deal a lot with them. And it's just so hard to get people to see the reality of the situation. It's just so hard. So prevention is better than cure. And let's spread the word that love does not hurt.
It's 12 minutes to 10. My guest this morning on ABC Far North, Marina Bakker, the author of Dangerous Liaisons, Red Flags of Dating and Relating. But you've also been nice enough, Marina, to bring in Anne this morning as well. And Anne, can you introduce yourself, because you work within this area?
Yeah, Anne Holden, and I work in Cairns in welfare services, used to work in education. I've worked with Marina for the last 15 or 20 years in a range of projects. And I'd just like to add a couple of things that really struck me about the book, may I? The phrase, charmers become harmers, I think really sums up a lot of what this book is about. Not being able to see through the charming to what will potentially become harming is the issue at the whole basis of this. Another part that really struck me, and we were just discussing before we came on air, was instead of using the phrase victims, use the phrase targets, because these women are being targeted by a particular personality type, and being a target is a really different thing from being a victim.
Okay, that makes total sense. Well, it's more empowering as well, isn't it? It's not something that removes power from you. And a big part of relationships that aren't correct is about an abuse of power or a misuse of power within that relationship.
Absolutely. And Kia, for me, it's now, I started to say, well, hang on a minute. If we try to change another person, well, we know that's pretty hard to do. But we can change. We can start to make different choices. It's what Anne said. Like that word target. Wow, they need me. It's not just because I'm stupid or gullible, naive that I keep attracting this, but it is because they also need me, and I can now make a choice. And so, choices.
Strong, strength, empowering, and also extremely easy to read as well, was my experience. So it leaves us now just to let people know how they go about tracking it down, Marina.
Sure. I'll just tell you that for Cairns, I'll be donating a portion of the book sale to SHAC. So SHAC is Shelter Housing Action Cairns. And what drew me to the organisation was because of the fact that they actually provide shelter to women who are experiencing intimate partner violence or abuse. The shelter aspect cannot be overemphasised for why so many women do stay sometimes in these situations. Where do we go? What do we do? So the shelter is providing that, and they're hands-on, so they're actually providing a tangible thing to assist. So yes, they can buy it from SHAC will be selling them as well, or they can go to my website www.marinabakker.com.
And are you in town for a launch as well?
So yes, tonight I'm at the Conservatory Bar. That starts at 6:00.
All right.
Thank you.
You are more than welcome. Marina Bakker, thank you so much for coming in this morning and telling us all about it. I highly recommend it, as you can, or you did say you can find it at the website. Drop down to the Conservatory tonight as well. And yeah...